Well, coming up on today's show, the low range, or maybe that's standard range, Tesla Model S and X back on sale. VW say they're open to sharing their electric car platform with others, and Kia reveals details for the US eNiro EV launch. Well, good morning, good afternoon and good evening. In fact, wherever you are in the world, welcome to EV News Daily. It's Thursday, the 31st of January. Martyn Lee here. I've been through all the EV stories I can find today, picked out the ones that I think you need to know about. Hey, quick correction, by the way. Clarification, if you like, from yesterday. I got an email from Ross. Now, Ross Tessian sensed my confusion with the Toyota story yesterday, because we're talking about how they're usually very loyal customers, and the stats that was provided in the article, or the interview that was given, was 9% of their customers were not as loyal as they were, and half of those were going to Tesla, but still Toyota sell millions of cars. That didn't make any sense. And Ross says the story that you read out wasn't, the source was wrong. The figure should have specifically said 9% of Prius customers are defecting the brand. 9% of Prius customers are defecting, with half of those going to Tesla. Well, that makes more sense now. The numbers are much more realistic. Thank you, Ross, very much for that clarification. Well, thank you very much, as always, to myev.com for helping me make this show. I couldn't do it alone, and they've built the world's first marketplace all about buying and selling EVs. Of course, a new EV would be lovely, but sometimes maybe it's not in your budget. Maybe you're not the kind of person that buys a new car. What about a used one? We'll check out myev.com for that and learn along the way about the future of driving electric. So Tesla's earnings call will have happened for Q4 2018 by the time you listen to this, due to the weirdness of the time difference of when I record and write this show, and then when the call is happening, I could wait, but it would then, the podcast would be so late. I'll do it on tomorrow's show. But the things that I'm sort of thinking about, that I'm wondering whether they will talk about on the earnings call / will have talked about by now. The Chinese Gigafactory is obviously going to be in there. The Model Y unveiling was going to be sometime this year. The semi-truck, the solar tiles, the new Roadster. I don't think the Roadster will get a mention, by the way. That's going to be a sleeper project for a while. Along with the pickup, by the way. The Model S and the Model X redesign, the inside, making it look like the Model 3 styling. Will that get a mention? The Superchargers, V3, new faster charging speed should have been announced by the end of last year, but it got delayed. Model 3 demand here in Europe. New Autopilot hardware, which the rumours say is being shipped in those Model 3s heading to Europe right now. The insane workforce growth. They keep employing tens of thousands of people and then laying off the thousands. So, net they're up on the year, but big growth and big cuts in terms of jobs. Full self-driving. The $35,000 Model 3. Oh, I could go on. But by now we'll know what was discussed. But anyway, let's start with a couple of Tesla stories. I've been a bit Tesla light over the last few days, so let's make that right. First of all, the Model 3 arriving in Europe. Reservation holders are getting their delivery date estimates. Now, Zach at Clean Technica has been keeping an eye on the TMC forum. My Tesla Model 3 Performance will be ready to collect in Madrid on the week commencing 11th of February, 3 weeks ahead of schedule, says this one forum member. Aside from the good news from Tesla, the German state has got some good news for all EV buyers of Nordrhein-Westphalia. It's the most populated state in the country. They've got some good news today, picked up by Clean Technica, that they are approving new subsidies for EVs for company car buyers. So commercial EV buyers, and a lot of cars in Germany, so this story says, are bought by companies, which is interesting. Maybe it's companies to then lease them on, I don't know. Companies buying EVs get €4,000 rebate and €8,000 rebate on fully electric trucks. Great news. Well, we've been talking a little bit about Tesla's new distribution centre. I think that's exactly what it's going to be. It was a big building that was being built in California, Northern California, but nobody could quite work out what it was, because when people would fly drones over the top, there was no parking on site. So you couldn't have 10,000 people making a new car there. But there were lots of bays for trucks. Well, a recent aerial video of the building in Lathrop, it's 60 miles east of the Fremont factory where the cars are built. It shows the completion of the facility's outer shell. It's a big old building, by the way. Says Teslarati, part of the assumption that this building will become a parts centre is based on the numerous truck loading bays. It's got all down one side, loads of truck loading bays, where the semi-truck will reverse in to unload and load. Well, there's also a job ad in the local area, which does tend to give it away. Let me read out the job ad, and I quote, "Tesla is looking for a motivated and experienced supervisor for our highly dynamic parts distribution centre. This position will provide supervision of day-to-day operations, receiving, stockpiling, shipping, and transactions related to the said activities. The supervisor in the warehouse will ensure efficiency and accuracy of stocking and organising parts and inventory." So, that kind of gives it away. Supervisor for a parts distribution centre required, says the Tesla job ad. Yeah, so we know what that massive building's going to be. And for anyone who is a Tesla owner at the moment, who has been waiting a while for parts, yes, we all feel your pain. We know that's one of the less enjoyable things about Tesla ownership is if the unthinkable happens and someone rear-ends you, or you damage it, or if for one reason or another need a new panel or new bits. You can be lucky and you can get them quickly, or you can be unlucky and you can be waiting a while. It's one of the bits of a new car company which they are still getting on top of. I've no doubt this distribution centre, which is huge, is going to house so many parts that looks like they are really focusing on customer service. Staying with Tesla, and instead of going back to its old, they are going back to their old model of software limiting battery packs. In other words, they put a battery pack in a car that is bigger, but software lock it down to a smaller size, and then you pay less. So what they're doing with the Model S and the Model X, they took off of sale last week the 75 kilowatt hour, and of course the Model S and the X were always called 60, 75, 80, 90, 100. The number, the size of the pack was in the name of the car. It's now going to put the lower range back on the market, but they're going to do that without any numbers in. So in other words, bringing it in line with the Model 3. So they're taking away any idea of how big your battery is. There's no badge on the back of it that says a number, right? It's going to offer two options, and the smaller one will have the same size battery pack as the bigger one, but it'll be software locked, says Fred at Electric. The company is moving away from the energy capacity of its battery packs as part of the naming scheme. So here you go. All the cars in the Model S and the Model X, they're really trying to differentiate them from the Model 3. They're all dual motor, all-wheel drive. They've got premium interior and sound. And there's now 4. There is standard range and extended range, and there's performance without ludicrous and performance with ludicrous. Let me run you through them. So I'll do Model S because the Model X, the numbers are slightly different, but the Model S will sell slightly more than the X. So the base price of the Model S is now $85,000. $85,000 gets you the standard range, which is 310 miles, which, funnily enough, is the same as the Model 3. So that's their golden number, 310. 310 miles standard range for the Model S. $85,000. You move up, though, and you get the extended range. You'll get the same battery pack underneath. It's the same car, but it's software unlocked to give you the full range. 335 miles, but that's now $93,000. So you're paying another $8,000, and you get another 25 miles. That, by the way, is a reduction in what the car would have cost before they took it, all these changes. So those are the two initial price points. The next one is the Model S Performance. Now this is performance no ludicrous. So that is $112,000 for 315 miles of range, but you go 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. But no ludicrous mode. That's for $112,000. Or you can get Model S Performance with ludicrous for $132,000. And it gets you 0 to 60 in 2.4 seconds. Same range, 315 miles, 2.4 seconds. Is that worth paying an extra $20,000 for? The good news is, if you don't want ludicrous, if you didn't want the P100DL, that car has actually got cheaper. If you just want the Model S Performance, it's $112,000, which is a saving on what it would have cost you. If you want the extended range in the future, you can always pay for it. You can get the cheaper one now and then pay to have it unlocked. Ludicrous mode also appears to be a software unlock. So if you get the Model S Performance, no ludicrous, and then in the future decide you want it, you can pay the extra and get that 2.4 seconds 0 to 60. It used to be a hardware upgrade, so that suggests that even if you buy the cheaper one, the hardware is ready to go with ludicrous mode. You just need to pay for it. I'll put a link to electric in the show notes. All right, moving on from Tesla to other car makers now, and according to a German newspaper, Volkswagen says the company is in talks with other manufacturers to open up its all-electric MEB platform, says Mark Kane at Inside EVs. Michael Yost, who's the head of strategy at VW, says the MEB platform could become the standard, not just for VW Group. Now, we know that they have done a deal with Ford and a new partnership, a strategic alliance with Ford. Ford will be using the MEB platform for their electric cars, but maybe there'll be more as well. Now, other companies that seem to be behind, Fiat Chrysler, perhaps, FCA, they seem a little bit behind on EVs. Maybe they'll just license the technology from VW, who are keen to get that platform being used for as many cars as possible. And of course, they get the license fee as well. Staying with Inside EVs, but moving on to Kia, and they've got the exclusive on this one for the Kia eNiro. The first vehicles are arriving in the US late next month in February, so about a month away, the first Kia eNiro. It's going to be sold in 12 states as well, more than people thought. California, Connecticut, Georgia, Hawaii, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Jersey, Rhode Island, New York, Oregon, Texas, Washington. Steve Kosowski. Is that right? Kosowski? Yeah. He's the manager of the strategy and planning at Kia in North America. He told Inside EVs this, and I quote, "Volume is globally constrained because Kia Motors America can't get the desired allocation from its parent company. The truth is that demand in other markets around the world is so strong." End quote. Kosowski explained that the regulatory pressures, especially over here in Europe, dictate that countries like Norway are a higher priority than the US at the minute because we've got emissions rules coming in soon. They have this conversation all the time, they say, at leadership level about how the US needs more cars. And that's an interesting thing, actually, that I was reminded about from one of my friends on Twitter who works in the auto industry, and I was saying why certain cars have different spec names. And I was talking about the Kia eNiro, that the three specs that you can get it, the names are entirely different. In fact, the specs are different to, say, the Korean or the European cars. And he was saying, so the way that it works is, unlike Tesla, who will make a car and ship it, or Apple, who will make a phone and ship it, the way that it works is that Kia North America will put their wish list in and say, actually, for the states that we're going to sell it in, you don't need the heat pump and we don't need battery heating, but we do need battery cooling, which will affect the price and the weight. Whereas Kia Europe will say, we do need battery heating and cooling because the climate's different, and we need this. And so each different part of the company puts their wish list in, if you like, but then they have their own spec sheets. Like, oh, right, that just seems... It makes sense, but doesn't make sense because, I haven't got a background in automotive, so I can come at it with a naivety which says, well, that's a bit mad, but also entirely logical at the same time. So thank you very much for that clarification. Some insight on the battery suppliers, by the way, as well. I'd had this, I'd read the speculation, but I'd never seen it confirmed. This seems to be confirmation, though, that the all-electric Niro, Kona and Soul, although they all share the same powertrain, have modifications. SK Innovation provide the cells for Kia. LG Chem provide it for Hyundai. Same company, ultimately, but with different battery suppliers. And so I'd kind of read it on forums and articles, and I'd never really been sure, but this Inside EVs article seems to confirm that. So the Kona has the LG Chem cells in, and the Kia eNiro has the SK Innovation cells in. And also, from what I know about those two different companies, they are making slightly different cell chemistries as well in terms of the nickel, cobalt, manganese. I won't get too geeky now, but they do kind of different things as well. Like one's better for range, one better for economy. Anyway, slightly. I mean, much of a muchness, but you can Google it if you're interested. I'll put a link to Inside EVs in the show notes. Well, if you've got an EV at the moment, how do you pay for charging it at home? And if you are EV curious, have you thought about what you'll do with your electricity tariff at home? Research here in the UK from Citizens Advice say they found a lack of clear information that makes it difficult for EV drivers to work out the best tariff to pick when you are paying for your electricity to charge your cars. According to Utility Week, they found 10 out of the 72 current domestic energy suppliers offering a specific EV tariff, with the number of such tariffs increasing from 2 to 10 in about a year. Half the tariffs analysed in the report offer a discount on home charging or public charging. However, the value of the discount can really vary. Interestingly, the research highlights that EV-specific tariffs aren't necessarily the best for EV drivers. The old Economy 7 tariffs, which have been around donkey's years, used to use those for heating up storage heaters overnight, radiators filled with concrete blocks. Heat them overnight on cheap rate, and then they would give out their heat all day long. Economy 7 still kicks around, and the report saying actually for some people they'd be better off on the old Economy 7 tariffs that are still around, rather than taking these energy companies up on their newfangled EV tariffs, which actually aren't as cheap. Well, in a response to the report, I want to give you another opinion. Fiona Howarth is the chief exec of Octopus Electric Vehicles. They provide the Octopus Energy Go tariff. And Fiona said this, and I quote, "This report demonstrates that time-of-use tariffs are great for EV drivers, and we need to see more of this sort of innovation." End quote. I'll put a link to Utility Week in the show notes. The new California regulatory compliance documents that just hit the internet are hinting at something really interesting. Lower trim levels of the new Nissan Leaf Plus, or E Plus, or 3.0 E Plus, 62 kilowatt hour. Catchy. The lower trim levels go further, say Green Car reports. To get the maximum range of 226 miles that Nissan have quoted, you need to buy the base trim. Now in the US, like I say, it changes over here in the UK, but in the US it's the S trim. So you need to buy the S trim, based on the California emissions tests obtained by Automotive News. The higher trim, the SL and the SV, have shorter range estimates, which Nissan say is 215 miles. In the tests, the 62 kilowatt hour Leaf Plus did on the really gentle urban cycle, the urban, the UDDS, or the UDD schedule. So this is the one that is a bit more gentle. 364 miles for the base trim. Of course, you don't just drive at those miles, those slow speeds. Whereas the SV and the SL did 330. So 34 miles less. Why is there a discrepancy? On the higher trims, well, they weigh about £75 more than the base model. I'll put a link to Green Car Reports in the show notes. Hey, finally, if you're in the UK or Europe and you're a fan of the Renault Zoe, I know I'm biased, Renault's introduced a new version on the Zoe range. It's called the Zoe S Edition, and it replaces the old signature nav version. There's a host of equipment at a small premium over the price of the Zoe dynamic nav. You get some leather bits on the seats, some lovely sound, a nice Bose sound system, plus all the bits that you got on the dynamic nav as well, which it's a very well-spec'd car. It's one of the reasons that I like owning it. You got the cameras, everything's electric, you got a fair bit of tech on a very cheap car. Not the most, but quite a lot. And so orders in the UK are now open for the Zoe S Edition, and deliveries begin in April. If you've been umming and ahhing about whether you should get a Zoe, then look up Will Adams from DSG on the forums. He is Badger in Black, and he's always on all sorts of places, whether it's the Renault Zoe Owners Club forum or whether it's just generally helping out people with advice. Check out Will, and he is in the car industry. Like I said, DSG is his dealership, and they sell a lot of Renault Zoes, so much so that they were the dealer of the year, awarded by Renault. Not that I've bought anything from him or he's paying me to say that. I just want to recommend him. And if you're after a used one, always check out EV Nick as well, who has his own YouTube channel. If you search YouTube for EV Nick, again, he sells a lot of used Zoes, and there's nothing he doesn't know. And it's always good to buy a used car from someone who drives one themselves. Hey, thanks a lot, by the way, to myev.com for helping out with Question of the Week. Here is the question. I'd love you to answer it, and it is this. What new car announcement would get the most EV publicity this year? Is it a hypercar, a truck, a small family car? What type of EV announcement could be made sometime in the next 12 months that would get the most PR in the mainstream press and further the cause? What do you reckon? Let me know. Email me. My personal email is this, hello@evnewsdaily.com. That's hello@evnewsdaily.com. And you can use the comments on all the places this podcast goes on, like Facebook and YouTube and MyEV. Well, thank you very much to 178 patrons of the podcast. Couldn't do it without you. If you want to check out what it's all about, patreon.com, patreon.com/EV News Daily. I'd love to add your name to the list if you are in a position to support the show. And if not, I'll always make the show either way. And this show will always be free. Where you get your podcasts from, just search EV News Daily. You can subscribe and get it first and free and automatically. Even the audio goes on YouTube these days. And if you want to catch up on the socials, have a little search for EV News Daily. You'll find me. In the meantime, have a wonderful day and I'll catch you tomorrow.